Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm super excited you could be here. So today we're talking about one of the best ways I've ever found for you to get money for your business. I mean, look, I've been doing this a long time, decades, right? We've helped on billions of dollars of capital secured to business owners. And I can tell you that of all the type of capital we've ever delivered, there's one program that is the standout, that is overwhelmingly the biggest, most funded program we've ever dealt with. And here's the best news. It works for newer businesses that oftentimes struggle to get money anywhere else. But here's the deal. To find a true expert in this space, if somebody's been doing this a long time and really knows the inside of the business, it's not an easy thing to be able to find. And I'm blessed to be able to have Joe McColl with us today because Joe's actually been with us, or why don't I just call him Joe McColl? Jack McColl. Sorry about that, Jack. So Jack McColl has actually been with us twice now, and very rare do I ever have a guest back on the show. But Jack killed it 2 years ago when we had him on the show, and I'm really excited to have him back to start talking about one of the best ways to fund your business, which is through credit card stacking, and oftentimes getting all different types of credit cards to be able to get the benefits to be able to fund your business. So Jack is an entrepreneur. He's a business credit expert and founder of Credit Card Stacking, and a program that's helped thousands of entrepreneurs and obtain over $100 million in 0% interest funding to grow their business and create lifestyle freedom. Now, he started actually with just $10,000 in a hoverboard company, and he actually learned through both trial tribulation, tough equity deals, and high interest loans before cracking the code on how to secure $100,000 in business credit with no tax returns or business history. Since launching credit stacking in 2016, Jack has scaled it into a 7-figure business, co-founded multiple different ventures, and been featured in Forbes for his work. He now teaches entrepreneurs how to scale faster, avoid giving up equity, and use credit as a cheat code for growth. Now, Jack's actually based in Utah, and he's also an action sports enthusiast and private pilot who believes that businesses should be a vehicle for freedom, not a grind. Jack, thanks for joining us today.
Ty, what an absolutely epic introduction. I really appreciate you having me back. It's an absolute honor to be on your show, not once, but twice. I'm really happy to be here, and I'll do my best to make this as valuable as possible for your listeners. One thing you mentioned is about using business funding as a cheat code in business, and I am so passionate about helping entrepreneurs getting access to the intel and the resources so they can get this type of money to inject that into their business or to their investments to really catapult themselves to the next level. For me, it took me a long time to figure out getting access to money from the banks. I worked with the different self-funding options, equity partners, family loans, loans that came with interest. And I found out about 0% interest business credit cards. And that just did amazing things for me. I put that money into several different e-commerce stores. And in the first year of that e-commerce drop shipping store, did $1 million in revenue, and I had a couple of successful stores after that. And so when I saw what that credit product did for my businesses, it completely blew my mind. And I got approved for this credit with no proof of income, no tax returns, no collateral. I just needed good, optimized, strong personal credit. And so I'm just so passionate about helping other people pretty much legally and ethically take advantage of the banks so they can get access to this type of capital and then put that into their business so they can create a life of freedom.
Yeah, I love that. And you've worked with a lot of the types of funding I have as well. So why do you think that this type of product is probably one of, if not the best funding vehicles that's out there for entrepreneurs?
I mean, most business owners can make money if they can borrow it for free for 12 to 18 months. And a lot of times people don't know about this specific credit product. Like, it took me 8 years to figure out. And I studied business at the University of Washington. They didn't teach about business funding. Blows my mind. But when someone can go into a bank, work with specific bankers, and have good optimized credit and get approved for 50 to a collective, maybe $300,000 at 0% for 12 to 18 months with, again, no tax returns, no proof of income, no collateral. I believe it's the easiest way for an early stage entrepreneur to get access to capital. Because usually when you go in for a business loan, traditionally, they're going to ask for a business plan, a track record, financials, but you just started the business. So you don't really have these things. And then if you get a traditional business loan, you're paying interest. So when you're paying interest, it naturally makes succeeding in that business more difficult because you have another expense on your profit and loss statement. And so when this credit product solved all of my issues, I didn't have to self-fund, I didn't have to give away equity, I didn't pay interest, and I could borrow it for a year to a year and a half. It completely changed the game for me and the over 3,000 people that I'm coaching right now.
So you used it initially to launch an e-commerce business to be able to buy the inventory and things that you needed to sell online.
Correct. Exactly.
What are some of the you've helped thousands of clients you just mentioned. What are some of the industries that they all hail from?
Yeah, another big example, too, in the real estate space is fix and flips. A lot of people who are flipping houses, they can do, quite easily 1 to 2 flips in a year, sometimes even more flips. So when you have an extra 100 grand, it's a lot easier to do deals. Also, Airbnb arbitrage, where people can get access to money. They can rent apartments or houses on a long-term yearly basis and then short-term rent them on Airbnb. A lot of people I help get the capital for that business model. Also, we have a couple good successful case studies from people who were raising money to get down payments to then purchase a cash flowing business. So when you use the credit cards as a financing tool, you just need to make sure there's a very clear way to pay off the debt before the 0% interest promotion period ends. So in this model, where one specific individual that I'm thinking of used this money as a down payment to buy a cash flowing business, he then used the cash flow from the business through the year to then pay off the card, which did amazing things for his life.
Yeah. One of my buddies, Joe McColl, which Like God, Joe, he's in the dirt flipping space with land, and he's one of many of the real estate guys out there that I know that use credit card stacking to be able to actually go out for their students and to be able to go out there and be able to buy real estate. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of the best programs to buy real estate, especially like if you talk about like the Burr method, because people are able to come in and buy the property, do everything they need to do, refinance out of it before that interest even accrues. But they're doing it by taking cash out. So let's talk a little bit about how the program actually works. So, what exactly is this program? Like, give me an idea of how the program actually works.
So with credit stacking,
Yeah, with credit card stacking.
yeah. So credit stacking is the concept of getting as much approved on 0% cards as we possibly can. Usually that's between 100,000 and 250,000. So if we reverse engineer, okay, how to get those max funding limits on a per card and per bank basis, it all starts with the personal credit profile, as you're well familiar with. So we want to basically make the credit profile look as attractive as possible in the eyes of the underwriters. And so I was quite fortunate in 2020 to get connected with a lot of different relationship managers to understand what the underwriters wanted to see. So we just customized that profile in terms of the amount of credit cards on the personal credit profile, the amount of collective personal credit limits that's reporting on that personal credit profile, the amount of tier one accounts, the average age, of course, the score, payment history, and the average age, which I mentioned that, but the number of hard inquiries also has a good effect, et cetera. So it's first starting with optimizing the profile, also while simultaneously building strategic bank relationships with the banks that actually matter. Like if someone's building a bank relationship with a bank that doesn't have good credit products, I believe they're wasting their time with that bank. So I like advising the people that I work with to build relationships at banks like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, because they have really good 0% cards and they're relatively relationship-based banks. And so when you're intentional about getting certain personal credit cards to build up your personal credit profile, you want to also think about building a relationship with those key banks. And by banking at those banks, they're going to trust you a lot more. So simultaneously to optimizing that profile, you're building these banking relationships, then they're going to trust you a lot more. Then it comes down to the applications. Some banks, we like to use relationship managers. Some banks, we do over the phone applications. And then other banks, we just do online applications. And that's perfectly good for a max funding strategy. So at that point, hopefully that person just got approved for $150,000 of 0% for 12 to 18 months. And at that point, they have the capital to use for their investments or for their business. And there are ways to liquidate the credit off of the credit card into cash. So a lot of real estate investors need to liquidate the credit into cash, and then they can use that in their business. And there's also different platforms like Bill.com or Melio Payments, where you can actually use a credit card to pay a title company if you do need the funds to pay a title company.
Yeah, and I love that. And I love how you walk through it because I think people hear credit card stacking and think they can just go out and apply for a bunch of credit cards at the same time, right? But I love what you described because you're really talking about optimizing their credit profile first. Then you're talking about a banking strategy where you're talking about finding the right kinds of banks. And there's a lot of different kinds. of banks. People don't realize, from credit unions to regional banks to national banks to fintech, a lot of different kind of banks out there. So then it's about figuring that part of it out. Then it's about the best way to apply at each one of those banks. Some is offline, some is online, some is knowing the right contact. Some is just different, but whatever the best methodology is, all the way through. So I love that. What do you find that, let's say somebody can get $100,000 using your program? What do you find? Because you and I both know there's people that stub their nose and say, "Oh, I can do this on my own," right? And you've probably had those people do it and come back and tell you the results. What, if somebody gets 100K, like what do they usually get if they were trying to go out and do this thing on their own?
It really depends. It's really hard to do it on your own, especially if you haven't been studying credit, and it's not something they teach in the universities. So you can have some amazing degree and be, you don't know much about credit. That was at least the case for me. The underwriters are looking for many different things on the personal credit report. They're looking for specific things on the relationship side, and also when it comes down to the information you're putting onto an application. If you have projected revenue of a certain high threshold, that can flag and basically then they're going to request looking at different tax returns and proof of income, things like that. But if you have projected income that's too low, you're just going to get denied. And those thresholds differ on a per bank basis. And I will say, getting access to high limits on these cards was easier in 2023, a bit easier in 2024. It is a little bit harder in 2025. It's still extremely doable to get these high limits, like 50K per card. Do that across 5 or 6 different banks. But you just need to button things up a little bit more, dot your I's, cross your T's. Ideally you have some business credit scores, which I know you teach a lot of. But you just need to be very intentional. And the thing is, if you do things, if you make mistakes on credit, it can hold you back for at least over a year. I'll give you one really good example of where people can shoot themselves in the foot. If they apply for over four personal credit cards in a 6-month period, there's going to be no business lenders that are going to be approving that client for business credit cards because there's too many personal credit cards approved in a very short period of time. And also, if you get denied at a bank on a business credit card, you're not going to want to reapply for at least 3 months. The longer you wait, the better. So it also depends on what kind of opportunity cost that person is working with if they don't get the money, right? Like if they have a business they want to buy right now, if they have a couple of real estate deals coming in the next few months, like if they don't get the capital now, then there's going to be a massive opportunity cost they're going to face because now they can't afford that investment, or they don't have the capital to invest it in. So I do see a lot of people make mistakes, and I don't blame them because it's very difficult. It's complex, but because I have data over 3,000 people, have been in this a long time, I know exactly what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, and I've seen everything you're describing. I mean, I've seen people that go out and try to do it on their own, and then they hit like a fraction of what they could have got, and then they want to come in, but they can't because they have too many inquiries on their credit report. It's like once you mess it, and I teach this all the time, like once you mess this up trying to do any of this stuff on your own, then what happens is those inquiries could really prohibit you from getting that kind of funding again, or a lot of other kind of funding for 6 months to 12 months. I've been in credit space for a long time, and I can tell you, and I know like a thing or two about credit. I wouldn't even venture into your guys' world. I've looked into it. It's crazy. Like you got to know the cards that report to TransUnion, the cards that report to Equifax, Experian, the ones that poll which bureau. I mean, there's so many nuances to what you guys do to be able to figure out exactly how to do this successfully. It's overwhelming on what you do to be able to produce a result that you produce for your clients.
Yeah, no, it's definitely complex for sure. And one resource we just put together it's called the Business Credit Application Guide. It's basically a step-by-step guide on a per card and per bank basis, because the strategy on a per card basis is different. Like if you go to Bank of America, it's going to be a little bit of a different strategy than at Chase, at Truist, at KeyBank, et cetera. In terms of optimizing the personal credit profile, that's a pretty streamlined process on how you want to optimize. And if you skip some of those steps, it's going to be very difficult to get approved for these business credit cards. And I've always been a big believer, and I think this is a huge reason for the growth I've had over the last several years, is hiring the best person with what you're trying to learn. Like if I'm trying to learn how to fix and flip real estate, I'm going to go find the best person that I admire the most, that I respect the most, and I'm going to pay that person money. It's going to save me a lot of time and mistakes. And so I have a mentor on tax strategy, on asset protection, on real estate right now that's walking me through a deal, on crypto. I mean, every big topic that I've become an expert on, I've had a mentor that just saved me so much time and so many mistakes. So I'm a huge believer in mentors.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and that's what I love about what you do is that you're doing it. You're teaching people how to do it. You're not just doing it for them because a lot of people pay pretty hefty pretty hefty fees to be able to pay some random company to do it. And the problem is that then they have to go back in 6 months and another 6 months and another 6 months, which there's nothing wrong with. I mean, people like a done for you product. I think you probably have one too. But I like the fact that you have a mentorship and coaching program teaching people how to do it. So then that way they can continue the rest of, their time in business and know and have a template to actually be able to succeed.
For sure. And these banks have such high interest on these credit cards. So 0% interest for the first 1 to 1.5 years. After that, it's 20 to 30% interest. So these banks, I think, really take advantage of people who are stuck in that position. So I think with a done for you funding service, which I do have one, but I genuinely believe the coaching and the done with you offer is much better because we give people the intel and the education around it, so they're not just left hanging. But when someone finds themselves in an unfavorable situation where they're paying interest, they didn't pay the card off in time, you want that education to figure out what those next steps are. Things like you want to be consistently building strategic bank relationships so you have additional funding options next year and 2 years later. Also, things like you want to make sure you have multiple different LLC, business entities structured correctly, because having multiple LLCs will open up more business funding options. And so it's not about just getting the funding today or this month, but it's also thinking about, okay, what if I need more funding next year or in 2 years? So this is a journey I like to bring people on, because getting access to money, having the ability to get access to money as a business owner, I think is a very, very important thing. And I personally learned that the hard way. I didn't have access, and it took me 8 years to really become an expert at, okay, if I need 50 grand, I know exactly how to do it. I just went to Chase last week and got another business credit card from them. And boom, I went in, I knew exactly what to do, got another one approved. And I think in addition to getting approved for 0% business credit cards, it also pays off big time to get access to business lines of credit. So with a business line of credit, as you're familiar with, your business needs to be over 2 years of age. Some of them you can get approved with no docs, no tax returns, et cetera. And so I think it's strategic for people to also apply for certain no doc business lines of credit in case you need that extra reserve, because it's easier to get the cash off the business line of credit because it just serves as a bank account pretty much. Comes at about 10% ish APR right now. But the combination of having the 0% cards and also the business line of credit, if you need, is very, very powerful. And actually, one thing that's really important for people to understand is there's a couple different banks. There's 3 banks specifically that allow you to move limits between their business cards. And here's why that's really important. So, and those banks are Chase, Bank of America, and American Express. So if we have a $50,000 Chase business credit card and we get to that end of that 12-month period, okay, we pay off the card and then get a second Chase card. Okay, now we can move all that available credit from that first expired 0% card and move it to the brand new 0% card we just got at Chase. Even if that second card was a 10K limit, well, now we can move that 50K limit from that first one over to the second one. So now we have $60,000 at 0% for another 12 months. And you can do that year over year over year. And if you're asking, well, what if I can't pay that card down at the end of that 0% interest period? Well, if you have a business line of credit, you can borrow from that business line of credit, pay off that first Chase card. So now it's 0. Then you can apply for a second Chase card. Then you move the limit from the first one to the second one. Now you have that 0% for another 12 months. If you need to pay off the business line of credit, you can liquidate that new Chase card. So it's cash, not through a cash advance, through liquidation. And then you can pay off that business line of credit. So now you have that balance on a new 0% card that's 0% for another 12 months. And you can do that at multiple banks.
Now, I love the strategy. And did you say that, let's say I have a Chase card with a $50,000 balance and I get a new one with 0% with a $10,000 balance? Can I really move the 50 over to the one, even if my limit's only 10K and push it that far above what my limit is?
So you mentioned balance, but if you had a limit of 50K and then you get a
Okay,
10K
so it's got to stay within
limit,
the limit.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You
I
can move,
misheard that. I was like, what? What would
you
that, I'm thinking, what would that do at a consumer credit report? Yeah, that makes perfect
you
sense.
can't move balances to cards at the same bank, but you can move available credit, available limit to new cards at
Wait, what,
Chase.
say that for me again. I'm only asking because like I've never heard of something like this before. So if Chase has a limit of 50K and I have another limit of 10K with Chase, you're saying that I can move my 50K limit to my other card with only a $10,000 limit?
Yes.
I
And
never
this
even
is why
heard of
it's
that
an
before.
absolute game changer, Ty, because in that scenario, you move that 50K limit to that 10K new card. And when you open that new 10K card, you just crack the code, you crack the seal on another 0% for 12 months. So now you move the 50K over instead of 10K, 0% for 12 months. Now you have 60K. And then you can do the same thing the next year and the next year. And then you can work your total collective limits on business credit cards at Chase up to $150,000 before they're going to ask for tax returns.
It's ridiculous. So like I can take a credit card, move it to like let's say it's $10,000 limit, and then I take the and I spend 10K. I could can I balance transfer the what's left over to another Chase card, or I can't do that in the same bank?
Good, great question. So you can't move the balance of the card to another card at the same bank, but you can move the available credit.
So I can move the available credit. I can't move the balance. So let's say I have $10,000, a $10,000 limit. I put 10K on it at 0%. Then I paid it down. Now I get another card for $10,000 at 0%. How much of that limit on the first $10,000 card? Because it's kind of, I'm not saying it's worthless. It's kind of ridiculous, but it is kind of not as good because I'm at a normal rate now versus 0%. How much can I reduce that limit to move that available credit over to the other card?
So a lot of times they'll let you move the full limit to the new card and it would close the old one.
Which I wouldn't
Sometimes
care about. I mean, you're just
you wouldn't care
basically just
because it's
rolling over
expired.
0% periods.
Exactly.
That's
Sometimes like at
ridiculous.
American Express, they say you can move everything but 2K and then you move everything over but 2K, etc. But it's an insane concept. It's absolutely massive and it's a game changer for a lot of people. And again, like if you don't have the funds to pay down the balance, that's where having that business line of credit on the side can come in play. And actually, I developed this concept only 6 months ago, blew my mind. But then you borrow from the business line of credit, you pay down the expired 0% card so you can then apply for another one at that same bank, move the available credit, and then you can liquidate that new card into cash. So then you can pay off the business line of credit.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Burr method, but for credit cards.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's
Yeah, that's
pretty
ridiculous in
insane.
itself. And I love the fact that you talk about credit lines or lines of credit too, because so many's out there that even mention this program talk about credit cards, but nobody talks about lines of credit. And lines of credit, as you know, and I know, that's what business owners really want. What business owners really want is a line of credit. So I like that you're combining these strategies and then using these kind of really brilliant strategies on top of that to then move available credit and then move things from back and forth so you can have more at 0%, liquidate at 0%, use it elsewhere, and then use this combination between these lines of credit and these cards.
Yeah, it's an absolute game changer, Ty. And this is like why I'm so passionate about teaching people this because I just wish I had this intel and these resources when I got started in business. I think it's so powerful. And I love teaching it to people. And I think, when you incorporate debt into a business or an investment, of course, it can increase the risk of that business or investment because if you don't pay it back, then you're going to pay interest or you go bankruptcy or all those potentially negative things. However, I do think to a pretty large degree, I think if someone has access to more money, their chance of succeeding in that business increases. It's very difficult, as you know, to start a business with only a few $1,000, 10,000, 20,000 bucks. It's very difficult to be successful in a business with starting with that much money. So I think for a lot of people, myself included, when I had access to more money, it helped me become more successful in the businesses that I was starting.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much brilliance to what you're saying because I can't. I'm affixed on this moving of available credit because like there's so many other benefits. Just you're talking about one, and if you're watching this, look, this is one of Jack's strategies. It's like one little strategy. Like he's got hundreds of these things. This is what he coaches on, right? But if you think about this as one strategy, what he's basically doing is because those limits are so much higher as you're doing that, then that means your subsequent approval limits will be higher as well. And that you're not even talking about that part. Like what happens is not only does that help your score significantly, available credit, so many other things on the consumer side, but then the next credit card you get, now they see your limit's 50K versus where it was like 30K. And now they tend to mimic that actual limit. So it just means your future limits from other cards are going to be higher and higher and higher as well. And that's just one of your hundreds and hundreds of strategies.
Yeah, it's true. And like we even have another strategy at Bank of America where on business credit cards at Bank of America, they're not known generally to give a high limit on a per card basis, but they do have 5 different business credit cards. So instead of just applying for one, well, how about we apply for two? What about three? What about four? What about all 5 of them at Bank of America? And what about if we consolidated those limits on those 5 cards to one card? And there's certain, strategies to enable to do that, but that's just another strategy. And this depends on the bank. Like the banks have different guidelines, different rules. We have different strategy at the different banks. But at Bank of America, they have 5 cards. The 5 cards, they're not even all 0% cards. But again, we're consolidating those limits from the 5 cards to one of the 0% cards at Bank of America. And so again, the banks you can move limits around is American Express, Bank of America, and Chase. And here's another really awesome strategy, and I can go on, but another incredible one is American Express is the only bank that I have found that lets you move credit from a personal American Express card to a business American Express credit card. So if you have a $30,000 limit on an Amex Delta Gold card, and you get approved for American Express Business Blue Plus card, you can move that available credit from that Amex personal card to the Amex business credit card, which is 0% for 12 months. We have a special phone number we call, and we give specific instructions on how to make that request. But we find all of these different loopholes, essentially, all these different, it's almost like tax strategy. A lot of people who are good at tax strategy, they're finding these loopholes. But really, it's just they're looking at the tax code, they're reading the rules and the guidelines, and they're just getting really savage at understanding this complex tax code. Just like now I understand this complex code in credit on a per bank basis.
Yeah, and it really is that nuance. And I mentioned that earlier of knowing which bureaus are polled by, certain credit cards, not even credit card companies, like certain credit cards and who they report to. And there's just so many things that involve. But I love the way you describe that because that's how I've made my reputation in funding is I know underwriters and even in mortgages, man, I knew their programs better than those underwriters did. And it's how I got deals done because I was able to go to them and they would turn it down. I'm like, why you turn it down? Because like X, I'd be like, no, your guidelines state this. They would go back to their guidelines, verify what I said, and have no choice but to approve it because I was working within the guidelines. Like I love people that do that when you just know it better than even the credit card companies. You have to have a special number and instructions because you're talking to these people. These people don't even know what you're talking about. Like you talk to the credit card company, they don't even know what you're describing is even possible. And that I love. I love it when you're figuring out strategies that even the frontline people at the credit card companies, they're oblivious. They don't even realize exist.
Yep, we're on the same page, Ty, for sure. I
Yeah.
have a lot of respect for you, man. You've done amazing things in the credit industry with Credit Suite and everything. So much respect.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So let's talk about some of the common problems that one of your students may have. Maybe my credit has problems. You already talked about that you help them fix those to be able to improve the credit to be able to potentially qualify. What if my balances are too high to qualify? Okay. Or maybe I have too many inquiries on my existing credit report now. Are those issues you can help me fix to be able to qualify?
Yeah, for sure. So a couple issues. If someone has negative payment history, there are very successful strategies like, late payments, derogatories, collections. There's very successful ways where you can dispute that debt on your credit report or that derogatory and get those removed from your credit report. So that's what we would do if someone had negative payment history. If someone had too many excess hard inquiries on their personal credit report, and too many is really more than two on a per bureau basis in the last 6 months. If you're over two, it's going to be hard to get approved for things. And so there's also ways where you can dispute those hard inquiries so the bureaus remove them from your credit profile. We teach about this. We have a service that helps people do it for sure. And then the other point you mentioned or question you had was about having high balances on personal credit cards or, a high debt to income ratio, things like that. If you have high balances on personal credit cards, how do you get those paid down? That is a little bit more of a tricky situation. It kind of depends on how utilized those personal credit cards are. If someone's 100% utilized on all of their personal credit cards, their score is a 600, it's very difficult for guys like us to help that person because their score is just so tanked. And a reminder, we don't want to just build strong credit. We want to build it and maintain it. So I utilize a lot of my business credit cards, but I'm keeping my personal credit profile and score pristine. 826, 840, it's pristine. You never want to use your personal credit cards for business. That's my opinion. If someone has some high balances, maybe they're at like 50, 60%, but their score is, 650, 680. It's low, but it's not crazy low. Then it is possible for someone to get approved for maybe like a personal loan at SoFi, or if they have a relationship at Navy Federal, you can get a personal loan and then use that money from the personal loan to then pay down the credit card balances. Because when you get a personal loan, say $30,000, it's not going to decrease your score due to utilization. It might decrease your average age. It might give you a hard inquiry, but it doesn't report to utilization. It just increases your debt to income ratio, which your debt to income ratio doesn't really affect your score. It's the utilization on these personal credit cards. So if you can use a personal loan to pay down your personal credit cards, then your score is going to shoot up, maybe from a 650 to a 750. Well, then you're in a good position to then potentially take next steps on applying for some business credit cards, and then you can get that 0% interest funding for your business.
Yeah. Jack McColl, everybody. I mean, Jack, you are a brilliant guy. Somebody's watching this, they're interested in maybe having you do it for them, or they're interested in your coaching where you could teach these kind of all these strategies that you have. Where should they go to be able to learn more?
Yeah. So the link to our website is creditstacking.com/podcast. Put a triple W right before that, but creditstacking.com/podcast. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to help you. I'm so passionate about helping people get access to these resources. It's really, there's a lot of crazy things happening in the world. And I think we need to be more intentional with our time and resources on acquiring more resources and skills than ever before. So that's why I like to help people with this skill specifically so they can get access to capital. My Instagram is Jack McColl. It's MCCOLL. Post some good content there. And I have some links in my bio there if anyone wants the done for you, for example, things like that. But Ty, thank you so much, man. Again, much respect. And thanks for everyone for tuning in today.
All right, Jack, thanks for coming on. All right. So listen, if you're watching this, make sure you go to creditstacking.com. You can go to creditstacking.com/podcast. As Jack had just mentioned, I just keep wanting to call Jack Joe. I mean, I do not know what is my problem today. So as Jack just mentioned, make sure you go to creditstacking.com/podcast. If you go to creditstacking.com, there's just a ton of information here. I mean, you're able to watch a video from Jack. You're able to learn a lot about it. You're able to see a lot of actual real approvals on there as well. But you also want to go and search Jack McColl online, because Jack McColl, you'll find him, he's got a ton of stuff on his social channels as well. And you want to follow him there as well, because he has a lot of training teaching these kind of strategies to give you a little bit of insight. He's a giver, so he kind of believes in giving you some of those free nuggets to helping you succeed. But of course, as you know, if you want the best results, you really want to work with somebody direct with Jack. I mean, I've sat here and learned things that I never have heard before, and I've been in the space a long time. And that's because Jack is an absolute expert at what he does. So the couple things to do is go to creditstacking.com. That's creditstacking.com/podcast. Make sure you search Jack McColl as well online, Jack McColl, and then you'll find his social, subscribe there, and then, talk to Jack and his team a little bit more about what they can do for you, because this is an education you absolutely is invaluable to your business. Once you learn what Jack and his team have to teach, then this is something that can carry you for many, many, many years. And as he talked about, lines of credit and different cards and how to be able to increase the actual available credit on all these cards. There's so many things that can help you through the life of your business. And you can get it all by searching Jack McColl online. And you can also get it at creditstacking.com/podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. Take care. Have a great day.